Well, a major city in northern Mexico is under lockdown after security forces arrested the son of drug kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman.
Alleged drug trafficker Ovidio Guzman was captured yesterday after a dramatic raid. His arrest, in fact, set off a wave of violence, including gunfights with security officers, cars set on fire, you see some of it here, and even shots fired at passenger and military aircraft. That violence comes as President Biden is set to visit Mexico next week. For more on this, Enrique Acevedo joins us now. He is the anchor for Enye Mas and a CBS News contributor. Enrique, great to have you join us on CBS News today. Just for those who haven't been following closely the story of El Chapo and his son and the entire Sinaloa cartel, just catch us up on why this specific arrest sparked this much violence and how it's different from what happened back in 2019.
Well, back in 2019, Errol, what happened was that Ovidio Guzman was arrested, and then after the reaction from the cartel forces, the cartel that the Guzman brothers lead, became so threatening to the society in Culiacan, to civil society in Culiacan, government officials, President López Obrador, decided to let him go. Now, almost a year after, more than a year after, what we saw was the same reaction from the cartel forces, what you were just talking about, trying to hijack the entire city to, in a way, impede Ovidio Guzman leaving Culiacan and going to a maximum security prison like it happened. I think what explains the type of violence that we saw yesterday is that this really hurt the cartel. We often hear that when there's an arrest of a cartel leader, that really doesn't make a difference in the operation of the organization. But I think the type of violence that we saw yesterday and that we continue to see in parts of Mexico today illustrates that this really impacted the cartel's interests.
So with that as the backdrop, President Biden is meeting with the leaders of Mexico and Canada in Mexico City next week. Is he expected to discuss this outbreak of violence?
Absolutely, Elaine. Right now, security cooperation is at an all-time low between the U.S. and Mexico, but it's still a priority. Of course, immigration, trade, the environment, these are all things that are going to be top of mind during the North American Leaders Summit next week with President Biden, President López Obrador, and Prime Minister Trudeau. But in the case of Mexico and the United States, security cooperation, despite the fact that it's not at its best right now, remains an important topic. Even more now, after what we saw yesterday, it was not just what happened in Sinaloa, but also things happening along the border in places like Juarez, in another state in Mexico, in Zacatecas. The government of Mexico has been criticized for not doing enough to fight these cartels, for having a philosophy of hugs and not bullets. That's what President López Obrador calls his approach to narco violence. But in reality, in the last 24 hours, we've seen a lot get done. And in a way, it gives Mexico a position of strength coming into these negotiations and these talks next week.
And we should also highlight that the Mexican government has said that if it wasn't for the American appetite for illicit drugs and weapons, these drug cartels wouldn't have such deep financial resources. And to your point, Enrique, Mr. Biden is visiting the border for the first time as president this weekend, ahead of his trip to Mexico. How do you expect he will approach the issue of immigration at the summit, as it does have many overlapping features with the cartels, drug violence, and the like?
Well, there's this paradigm of co-responsibility that we often ignore, both on the American and the Mexican side, on all of these issues: drugs, the environment, immigration, of course, trade. And I think more and more people are starting to realize that our destinies are tied together. 12 million people live along the border, on both sides of that border. And for them, Mexico and the United States, it's just a sign on the other side of a bridge. Their lives are connected to both cultures, to both languages, to both realities. And I think it's great that President Biden is going to be at the border, witnessing that firsthand. It's not the first time he goes there, but it is his first time as a sitting U.S. president, and also at a moment where immigration has become this divisive issue, despite the fact that there's consensus in public opinion of having a common sense immigration approach and common sense immigration law. So I think it's important to see that he's going to be there just before meeting with President López Obrador on Monday and with Prime Minister Trudeau, because immigration, I think, is going to be the most important topic discussed in those meetings. And Mexico is doing a lot to try to avoid the images of chaos and disorder that we've seen in the U.S.-Mexico border in the past couple of years, really in the last decade.
A lot to watch this weekend. Enrique Acevedo. Enrique, thank you so much.
Thank you, Enrique.